So, welcome to everybody listening now and in the future. Tonight we have a lecture with our good friend Robin Grille, Life as Therapy, How to Live Free from Our Past. And tonight, my job is to introduce Robin. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kate White, and I'm the founder and director of Prenatal and Perinatal Healing Online. And my husband is Brett Harris. He and I run the online school together. And also, like, Robin was one of our first teachers in the online school when I started almost 5 years ago. And so it's wonderful to have you back, Robin. I'm just going to introduce you with your bio to get you started.
Go ahead.
Robin Grille is an Australian psychologist and parenting educator. His articles on parenting and child development have been widely published and translated in Australia and around the world. Robin's first book, Parenting for a Peaceful World, received international acclaim and led to speaking engagements around Australia, the US, UK, Canada, Indonesia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong. His second book, Heart to Heart Parenting, is also available in German and Korean. Robin's work is animated by his belief that humanity's future is largely dependent on the way we collectively relate to our children. Inner Child Journeys, How Our Children Grow Us Up is his newest title. Robin's experiential, skill-based, and informational parenting courses have helped many people to embrace parenting as a transformative personal journey. I can say that's definitely true for me. Drawing from 28 years clinical experience and from leading-edge neuropsychological research, Robin's seminars and courses focus on healthy emotional development for children as well as parents, while building supportive, cooperative parenting communities. You can see more about him and his books and videos, resources, plus other services at robingrille.com. Please go ahead, Robin.
Thank you, Kate. It is a little bit like being, this is my virtual home with you and Brett. It's been years we've been working together hard, delivering courses. So it's good to be back. Thank you. Thank you for your warm introduction. I do need to update that a little bit. 28 years. I wish I was still only 28 years old as a therapist. I would feel a little younger. Oh, and the latest news is my first book, Parenting for a Peaceful World, is now out in French. And it's either already been published or it's about to be released very, very soon, almost any day now. So I'm quite thrilled about that because I hadn't been to Europe with my work all that much. And I'm looking forward to that. I hope it opens up lots of new conversations. Anyway, so welcome to all of you. Welcome to all of you. It's good to see you all, and it's lovely that you could make the time. Welcome to all of you that might be listening in the future as well. Life as Therapy, How to Live Free from Our Past. And I know that's quite kind of a grand title, isn't it? How free do we get from our past? Well, I don't know, but it's a hell of a good direction to aim towards. That's something that feels pretty certain for me. So what do I mean by life as therapy? I've been thinking about this a lot for years, insofar as I think right now, for me, this is a kind of a response to a kind of very collectively shared and not very well examined idea or assumption that therapy or healing is a thing that we go and do in a designated space with a specialist. It's kind of like taking the car to the workshop, okay? And this is life over here, and that's therapy over there. And when you can afford the time and the money, and are bold and brave enough to jump on in, you go and you take yourself to get. There's a kind of a fixing, even though we've learned to say, you know, this is not about getting fixed, and yet somehow I think we still bring the attitude of fixing, of repair, because fundamentally I'm not okay. Something about me is not okay, and that's why my life is hurting in sometimes some intolerable ways. So I feel like I want to, in our discussion today, counter that idea, even though that would undermine my work as a therapist, right? Potentially. But I don't believe we're necessary in the way that we thought we were as therapists. Doesn't mean that there aren't good things that we do, but not quite. I think the great work is done in the day-to-day interactions, between the therapy sessions or without the therapy sessions even. With that, I want to come out and say that it's funny how, this is a belief that I kind of, I've tended to hold privately. It's a little bit like being a little bit shy to speak of one's religion. But here, I'm going to out myself a little bit. I strongly suspect that the experience of interacting with the world around us, the thing that we call life, is in its design and its potential far more pleasurable, far more ecstatic, blissful, and nourishing and fulfilling than we realize. It's as if there's a curtain or a screen that interrupts our ability to tap into far richer peak experiences of life. It's not that deliciousness is sustained, because there's pain and there's loss, there's frustration, there's confusion, there always will be. But that the peak experiences fundamentally, there is an abundance that a lot of the incessantness of suffering is an indication that we're not seeing it somehow. Somehow we're holding life at arm's length, I think, is one lens through which to look at the human condition, the shared human condition. I want to paint that picture that way right now for the sake of this discussion. Imagine that we're holding the deliciousness of the potential depth of deliciousness of life, right? The ecstatic. We're holding it at arm's length, actively holding it at arm's length. But this arm that does the holding has become unconscious. Beneath our awareness, we push away, but we don't want to really be aware that we're pushing away. And what could be on the other side of that pushing away that we have learnt to do defensively? And this is why there's a sense that there's a tendency to relive patterns, relive themes that are familiar from darker, more painful aspects of our past. Perhaps things that were wounding in growing up, things that terrified us as little children or even babies before verbal, struggles as adolescents. The key kind of woundings that happened in potentially for all of us. There's a tendency that not the exact same thing necessarily to the same extent, but the theme, whether it was themes of invasion or violence or chaos or loss or fragmentation, themes of neglect, themes of emotional distance and dissociation, there's a tendency that those things get repeated like patterns. If I was a Buddhist, which I'm not, and I understand very little about it, but what resonates for me is that sense of a wheel of suffering. It's no wonder to me that the Buddhists speak of that. Well, I see that in my life, and I see that every day in my work. That thing where you'll always hear yourself or someone else say something along the lines of, "Oh my God, why do I always end up in this kind of relationship?" You know that one? And I swore that this time it was going to be different. And it kind of was in a way. And yet, even if it's not as bad as before, there's a flavor that just repeated. Or why do I always end up working with these kinds of people? Or why do I always end up? One of the things that I hear endlessly, ad infinitum as a therapist is, oh my God, I've done all this work. I thought I'd handle that. I did this weekend workshop, and here I am again. There's that thing of again. It's very frustrating. Very frustrating. There's the God damn it moment in our personal growth, and there's so many of them. And then we get mad at ourselves and we get ashamed and we feel like we failed. And that's a golden opportunity to go home and beat ourselves up, repeating yet that pattern as well. So these patterns of repetition. How does that work? I feel like I want to open that up a little bit, lift up the bonnet and see what's in that engine. They say the past is behind us, right? And you've probably told yourself that many times. Now, let it all go. It's behind us. It's sort of sounds wise, doesn't it? And there's always going to be Facebook memes exhorting you to let go of your past because there's a switch in your body that you can press on and it lets go of the past, like a chute, right? Like a garbage chute. Whoosh! And you have that much control. Right. You can tell I'm kind of at war against the psychology memes. I can't stand being told how I'm supposed to travel. So yeah, the past is gone. Fair enough. The past is totally gone. And I don't think the history repeats. But it does tend to rhyme. Who was it that said that? Who was that guy that said that? History doesn't repeat, but it tends to rhyme. What's his name? Famous American author. Tip of my tongue.
Mark Twain?
Mark Twain. Thank you, Brett. Yes, exactly. It does tend to rhyme. Why does that happen? Well, here's what does stay with us. And now we're going to talk neuropsychology. In the formative years, when we are so much more vulnerable than what we care to remember, and so much more permeable to the temperature of our environment, the mood state of our environment, so much more absorbent. When things happen that are terrifying, I dare say traumatic, or when there's relationships that it's not like an event trauma, but fundamentally unsustaining, developmentally unnourishing relationships present in our lives. Human beings are remarkably resilient, but we don't just bounce back, we adapt. So we are changed behaviorally by the experience. We survive by, there's an imperative to learn neurologically a defensive response set. Things like, and then that becomes habituated. When it saves your sanity, it becomes habituated. What it means when a defensive response becomes habituated is that there are neural pathways, like a network, like a web, to support that reaction becoming three things: automatic, unconscious, and spontaneous. So that when you feel a similar threat in your life, even at a distance, your body will emit that defensive response that is characteristic to you in a flash without your permission. And there's a whole family of defensive responses, some that are more dissociative, like zoning out or going up into our head and intellectualizing, rationalizing. Some that are more from the fight place, dominating, controlling, seducing, manipulating, impressing, selling. Some that are more about the flight response. So that'd be more the fugue, the abandonment, the walking away, the leaving. So there's a rainbow of responses. The ones that saved your sanity get embedded neurologically. So respect this because it has kept you together. But the human dilemma is that those responses remain with us at hair trigger. So when there's the faintest smell of a threat that our bodies, the body memory, implicit memory, this brings back here's that thing again. We become our automatic selves. So we do that thing that's most characteristic to ourselves. So in a nutshell, personal growth isn't about eliminating that. It's about respecting that and becoming awake to that sooner so that we know when we've been triggered and we become wiser about what to do to feed ourselves so that we get untriggered. But we can still get triggered up until the day we die. How does that repeat the themes from our past? Is that our bodies have a particular skill set. So we tend to gravitate towards environments in which our skill set is valid. If you're good at sailing in a storm, then you're going to be ending up sailing, your ship will move towards where the storms are. This is why, there's that kind of old wives' tale that you tend to marry your parent, right? You know that, oh my God, I've married my mother. I don't think that happens a lot thematically. I don't think it's quite as exact as that. But we do tend to become magnetized or attracted to people that will bring us the old themes, because that's the devil I know. This doesn't happen consciously. It's just that our vision turns in that direction. Here's the other thing that you might get with a partner that isn't a lot like the people that you used to have in your life. But you bring that out of them because our defenses interlock. When you become your defenses, your automatic self, it tends to trigger a defensive response in whoever you're interacting with. So then you get this dovetailing. In other words, if I didn't marry my mother, I'll probably turn you into my mother if you stay with me long enough. I'm sorry for how grim that sounds. I mean, there's a kind of, it's awful to laugh at that. But this is, like I said, it's not that that's true word for word, but that theme is what unfolds. So we tend to choose the fight we know. No wonder we get stuck in this circularity quite a lot. There's a tendency that here's the tragic part where we remain stuck. Our defenses end up tending to create the circumstance or the feeling that we were trying to defend from. You come in putting up your dukes, you end up in a fight. And then you blame the world for that. You say, we live in a violent world. But you came in with a fight face. That's one very, very obvious example. And very tragically, that because our defenses work so well because we set them to automatic pilot. So to a large degree, we walk around in the world unaware of our defendedness, and even more so unaware of how that's triggering people around us. So it does feel like it's the world's fault because we don't see ourselves all that well, right? How we invade, how we overdemand, how we cling, how we abandon, how we neglect, how we ignore the people that we love in our lives. We don't see that very clearly. So we do get surprised and end up thinking, why does the world always feel this way? sounds bad, but there's becoming aware of that process is 9/10 of the law, as they say. It already starts making a huge difference. Here's some examples. The baby that's under threat of non-responsive parenting survives by becoming overly clingy, and that stays in our nervous system. We grow up to be clingy in relationships, possessive, jealous, codependent. Our clinginess smothers and alienates, and people start to move away from us. So we relive, very tragically, the abandonment that we've been trying to defend from. And then we wonder why. Another example where, somebody that grew up in a chaotic, sort of violent environment and happened to, because of the DNA of a very robust body system, that person grew up, tough. The person that fights their way out of situations. The fight response is set on a head trigger, preferentially. And then, so that's a dominating kind of personality. Usually that person is going to get all of the promotions in organizations. We tend to select bullies and dominator-style people, and when we give them the top jobs. That's part of the repeating pattern as well. I'm scared. Give me a strong daddy or a strong mummy. Strong. What do we mean by strong? So then the dominator style personality, dominating out of fear, because unless I'm dominant, I get trampled. That's my history, the history that I'm trying to not remember. And that puts people off. You remember the myth, the Greek myth of the sword of Damocles. The moment that's your relating style, there's always going to be people trying to undermine you. The alpha male or alpha female is surrounded by aspiring alphas waiting for a moment to stab in the back. There's a constant stream of undermining interactions that happens. They sense that. It rewards the paranoia. It confirms the paranoia. I'm living in a world where people are out to get me. I must stay on top. Hit harder. So the cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. There's I'll give you some more examples just to really illustrate how we co-create. We contribute to these cycles that we end up in unwittingly, through no fault of our own, defensively. So there's, say, somebody that survived by becoming very, very agreeable, had very pushy, dominant, controlling parents, critical parents. They survived by becoming very, very agreeable. That person who has no boundaries. And then by having no boundaries, life feels like they're getting trampled in a lot of relationships. So the defense of having an over spaciousness and lack of boundary leaves them feeling like the very thing that they were trying to defend from. The person here's another example. The person that, and these are very, very typical common examples. You'd get like 10%, 20% of our communities that have some of each of the examples I'm giving you. For example, the person that overcares, is always looking after everyone else and overextending, who learned to get stuck in that rut neurologically to, little kids that feel a sense of emotional abandonment. Let's say mom was suffering in a depression. So they grow themselves up. They become the nurse. They become the therapist. I take care of mum. I make mum okay. And then I'm not alone anymore. And then you do that enough times, it becomes habituated, and neuroplasticity, it becomes wired very hard. So it's automatic. So we care in order to feel cared for, but then we get stuck in over caring and live our life in a state of emptiness, perpetually reliving not feeling cared for. It's funny when there's an over-carer in the room, everybody else tends to, in an organization, everybody else just leans into them. So then we co-create in our relationships. It's like we help each other to stay stuck. We take advantage of those things. On and on and on, the person who felt very rejected, that builds a very strong armor against the rejection. But then people in their life can't feel them. And after a while, they walk away. So they protect from rejection and then end up feeling rejected because of that protection. On and on and on. So that's the sad part. That's the human condition. And I think it's just so helpful to unpack that. It's so helpful to understand that this isn't a random, that repeating suffering of relationship is not random. There's a structure to it. And even more importantly, there's a story to it. And understanding the story sets the foundation, because if you really tap into what it felt like inside yourself in the moments that life was provoking you to the level of building those defenses, tap into that for 5 seconds, you're flooded with compassion. You get the no wonder feeling. No wonder I have these reactions. It's not that I'm crazy. It's not that I'm a, faulty human being. I'm cleverly defending from an experience. No wonder. The moment of no wonder is the flood of self-compassion and forgiveness that makes everything else possible. So there's huge value in not in dwelling on our past, but in being students of our past, very honest students of our past. And that gets dismissed industrially. There is so much messaging not to do that. There is such an unspoken agreement that particularly the past that happens before there were words, that it doesn't count because there's very little narrative memory. Point is that there's body memory. The body remembers everything that you felt from about the 3rd trimester in the womb. So that time counts potentially even more because you were more vulnerable. The challenge is that some of the things that you experienced with nice mum and dad, but things that would have frightened you without their knowing, frightened you to the point of unbreathable terror. It happens. Normal things that happen can be traumatic to babies and little children. There is such a continues to still be, it's getting better, but it continues to still be societal injunctions not to delve. Like delving, you don't dig up the past. Well, don't dig, but be a compassionate student of your own past. The point isn't to relive it. The point is to get these ahas, these tremendous ahas. Because yes, the past is gone, but you're still carrying the defensive style that served you most well. And it's costing us. What's it costing us? Well, what if life is actually designed to be ecstatic? That's what I started to say earlier on. Potentially ecstatic, not all the time, but we ask for the pursuit of happiness. That's in the, what isn't that in the in what's left of the American Constitution, right? In the Bill of Rights, and let's hope you keep that. We quite like that Bill of Rights. But it's not good enough because it's the pursuit of happiness. That's too damn humble. Way too humble, too small a thing to ask. It's the acceptance of ecstasy. I'd like to write that in, if I could speak to the forefathers. And we should have some foremothers in there as well. But that's another matter. the brilliant psychiatrist, a great motivator and innovator in somatic psychotherapy, Alexander Lowen. And I really like the way that he articulated that the capacity for the body is intrinsic pleasure in our work, even in our body, physical work. The things that give us a sense of drudgery and boredom, like having to mow the lawn or dig a trench or wash the dishes, what we're missing, part of why we get bored, is that we're missing the inherent capacity of pleasure of being in the body. We call these things the simple things of life. We minimize. And yet there is neurologically the capacity for deliciousness in breathing and movement, and even in sitting. And we're so, this is a happy thing to consider, that we're so tragically disconnected from that, as if the machine is there, but someone pulled the plug. It's still there. The bliss potential really, really interests me. Look at babies where their bliss hasn't been taken from them yet. Look at babies at the end of a full feeding from mother's breast. And it's an ecstatic body language of the head dropping back and going, ah. And we tend to narrow that image to people that have just taken a very, very potent drug like MDMA. The reason we love those drugs is because it's taking away the fear that we carry about surrendering to those spaces. It's a defensive fear. It's to oversimplify, it's like I'm terrified to love again, because that's where I was shattered when the love was taken and lost. Terrified to go near it. So we defend against the bliss, is what we mostly defended of. By the way, bliss isn't just bliss. It comes with connectedness. They're two words for the same thing. Ecstatic, the blissful experience, the ecstatic peak, is simultaneously a sense of interconnectedness, of oneness, of intimacy. Intimacy is blissful. Bliss is about intimacy. It's the dropping of my illusion of separate state. We've made a whole economics and politics around being a separate atomized individual, and yet that's like an elbow of our experience, a very important piece of our experience, individuality, which is precious and must be protected by law, but it's only an arm of our existence. Our depth, this is what wisdom traditions all over the world say exactly the same damn thing. And so do a lot of ordinary people. At the bottom of the ocean, there's a state of non-separateness, and it's blissful. Why isn't that ordinary? It actually is ordinary. The vast majority of people that have those ecstatic experiences don't go on to become gurus and start a brand. The vast majority. Gurus are just people that would like to get lots of attention for it. I'm not a great fan. I'm not a great fan, as you can see. So, and there's interesting studies where they put people that are in ecstatic experience, that interconnectedness, blissful experience. They put them inside an MRI scan, and it's quite specific. Things that are flashing in the parietal lobe, and that the logic, rational part of the brain powers down. It's like you can tell this is the design. It's ordinary. I don't feel much of that. I get flavors of that. Life, when I dare to look deeper, life frightens me. And I'm working with that. And it's mainly an old fear. It doesn't represent the present moment very accurately. So, this is what's possible more often. what's the way forward in a nutshell? And this is where what I'm about to tell you is a very nutshelling, a very simplified indication of what we do in my inner child training courses. And there's one coming up, and we'll tell you about that later on. It springs from this book, Inner Child Journeys. Can you read that, or is it on backwards? Yeah, cool. Good illustrations in that, by the way. I love the drawings in it, just for fun. Our stuckness isn't the end of the story. You know, those repeating patterns, oh, here I go again, here I'm there. That's like the smoke that tells you where the fire is. So there's a usefulness in that. There's a usefulness in, you know, when you see yourself getting, you know, that negative self-talk and the judgments and the projections and the blame and self-blame and all of that, rather than smack yourself on the wrist and say, put that down, become interested in that is my suggestion. Become interested in that. You don't believe it literally, but look at those places of stuckness as an indicator that there is a deep inner child need that is desperate for your attention. So you bring that home. It's okay that sometimes you're horrible about other people and towards yourself. It's okay. Look at that. Look at that as an indicator that there's metaphorically speaking, because the inner child is basically body memory. The neuropsychologists call it implicit memory. Starts from the amygdala in the brain. That's another long story. But so the inner child is speaking. The inner child is saying, I'm still waiting for this need to be met. Whether it's a need for feeling seen, feeling held, feeling protected, feeling nourished, or a need to express something that I've never been allowed to express to self-assert, to say no, to set boundaries, to express my art, my voice, my passion. So it's a need that I have from outside or a need that I have from inside me that wants to be expressed, some developmentally interrupted need. And the inner child or inner baby or inner adolescent is still crying out for that. Okay, so the stuckness shows you where that is. As we learn, and this is what I teach in the Inner Child Journeys process, the more that you learn to listen to the body and to actually validate that need. Part of you won't want you to, because the reason why that need has become so unconscious is that your world said no to that. That's shameful, bad. The world mostly says grow the hell up, which is the very reason why we can't grow the hell up. So when you validate that need, which is the most subversive thing that you can possibly do, because right now you are breaking the shell of culture and probably defying the authoritarianism of your ancestry. When you validate that need, you say yes to that. Now, I'm going to call that a developmental nutrient. And this is where life itself is a therapy. There's ways that we can have that need met. It's usually in our life, through our daily interactions, through our relationships, through the way that we walk through our world, the way that we deploy our work, the way that we express in the world, and the way that we reach out, the way that we connect with people in our lives differently in an unfamiliar way. Finding that need and daring to give ourselves the developmental nutrient that matches that need is often a great surprise. It comes as a surprise because we'd buried that need and made it unconscious because the world said no and shamed us or frightened us. That's why it often comes as a surprise. And most of pop psychology, when I look at it, you know, popular Facebook meme styles of psychology are about grow the hell up. Grow the hell up. It's a exhortation. It's a get over it. It's an empathy blocker. It's not about validating what the actual need is. You're supposed to be different. It confirms the shame, in a sense. Most of it is like that. And it's repeating an old pattern. It's interesting how often I find in my work, both in my personal growth work for me and in this is why I sometimes need other people to kind of shine a light on me, because I don't see it. It's often people are surprised about, oh my God, I'm allowed to have that? I didn't know that. I was thinking I needed to do something else. For example, uh, where we think that in order to live better and to have things be better, I need to be more reliant. I need to be stronger, bigger, and tougher. And I'm not allowing myself to ask for help. As there's some kid inside here I'm wanting to remember how to ask for help and for that to be okay and to actually receive help and enjoy it. But that got interrupted and stuck. So that another way of saying a lot of the pop psychology is out of sequence. It is good to become independent in things, but when you shove that on top of a different need it comes from a different part of the developmental sequence, it doesn't work. Your whole body resists that. We often misalign the developmental nutrient, thinking that the need is something else. Or we continually might be, mollycoddling and supporting and empathy when somebody's already got some of we're failing to see that there's a robustness in the person. They're ready to stand up and be more assertive. But we just continually, we're feeding a baby when this person is coming from a more 12-year-old place. So often there's a misalignment. So the important part is trusting the body, really listening for the reality of what is the developmental need that's being activated right now. The body can't lie. The body tells the truth. And it's often a surprise because we didn't want to know. We didn't want to know what it was. So what does developmental nutrients look like? It depends on what is the developmental need that is the unmet developmental need that is being active for you at the moment. It could be about, I need to practice the art of reaching out and asking for support. Or I need to practice the art of having a boundary where I say, I don't want to be the carer right now. I have a right to not be the carer. Or it might be, reclaiming your right to be playful in your work, because my God, 12 years of school trample that into the dirt. Changing our relationship to our work, that it can be more pleasurable, spontaneous, enjoyable, and more generous. The developmental nutrient might almost be leaving your job and trying something else, or learning something else, or just reorganizing the way that you do it, not necessarily leaving. Often the developmental nutrient ends up being about receiving. Gee, people are nice to me, and I do reach out. But when the love is here, or when the holding is here, I'm uncomfortable. I push away. I don't breathe it in. I don't allow myself to show the pleasure in my face because I'm ashamed of that. See how it becomes then quite particular, but incredibly life-giving. Now, I find it really exciting to consider that each day when I wake up, really life is saying, you've got some opportunities here, young man. What are you going to do with that? Will you remember what it is that you're trying to learn right now and trying to express? There is a caveat that stepping into unfamiliar ways of relating that feel more alive and vibrant, it requires repetition. You're retraining your neurology, your body, your whole musculoskeletal system to breathe differently. So it requires a repetition. You can't do it once. Because the more that you repeat a new behavior that's sort of out of your script, out of your usual familiar playbook, the more that that becomes then embedded. You understand neuroplasticity. You're hearing it all the time now. The more that there's neural pathways that then support that. So that new behavior, so that you have an easier access to it. The other lovely thing that I'm reminded to say is that if it feels just brutally difficult, and you think, oh my God, I've got to slay this dragon for life to feel different, you're probably sequentially out of place. You're making a demand of yourself that's from an older, later developmental stage where first you might need, more support, more alliance from people, not being alone with it, with your struggle, in a sense. So you're missing the depths. There's a need that you're not looking at. I often find that the surprise in identifying the developmental nutrient that's going to be the right one for myself, I often find, or for somebody I'm working with, quite often I find that it ends up being a surprise, and that it's going to be a little easier than what I thought. It's always uncomfortable, but often it's not quite as overwhelming as I anticipated it was going to be. Simply because we tend to look in the usual places. We don't look to the natural thing that feeds us, because the world repeatedly said, don't do that. Do not validate that need. That's why we get kind of semi-blinded. So maybe I've said enough, huh? I just want to check my notes. I really like that thing that if dare to validate the need that your culture, your school, your elders said was not okay. In fact, I'm inviting you right now to think about that. What are some of your deep core, or one of your deep core needs that it almost feels like you have to dare yourself to admit it to yourself? That one or two need that it's so uncomfortable, you look away. The one that you're supposed to grow out of. You're supposed to grow out of that need. Do you have that? What would it be to be that subversive that you say yes to that, and that you go even further? And I'm not only going to just validate the rightness of that need so that I don't have to be ashamed, but I might even have that need met in some kind of an adult appropriate way. That might require that you be inventive or creative about it. How can I have more support? How can I set better boundaries? How can I express my truth to others more in a more raw and real fashion? How can I dare to play my banjo in front of people? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's your banjo? What is your banjo? I love the banjo because it's by nature of its sound, it's childlike and innocent and funny and harmless. Banjos are harmless. So they become so exposing in a sense. I'm not sure that you can play punk rock or heavy metal on a banjo, really. It wouldn't really quite work. So it does expose a lovely humor, like the naughtiness of a 4-year-old in a sense. So I tend to lock up when I'm playing my banjo to another person because I'm a baby banjoist. I tend to lock up a little bit. It's but to allow myself to be. Children don't do that. They'll play their instrument and sing the song as badly as it comes out, what a joy in the act of the expression. Until someone comes and takes that away and crushes that. Right? But that's still in our bodies completely. Absolutely. That's what I mean. It's subversive to let ourselves be more of who we are. It's subversive. It's countercultural. Every time. I would love to then hear from you if you have questions or something that moved you, or burning questions that you don't want to leave the room before this is answered for you. Or not that I can make a promise that I can answer it, can I? But or things that move you, something that you want to comment about. And the great challenge in this circus is that I don't know how many of you there are, but to try to give as many people a little go, I will ask that you condense the narrative of your question, because I really want to hear the essence of what you're saying. Hit me with the nub of the matter, if you could. There's a challenge for you.
Yeah. So come on and ask your questions or make your comments or share as you wish.
Playtime.
Yes.
Playtime. I want to hear from you.
I have a question in relation to just the whole notion of becoming an adult, which is a work-orientated sort of conception. What are the easiest ways to get back to that state of play?
I'd love to know your name so that I can address you.
It's David.
David
and Jane. Because
David,
it's
yeah.
intrinsically the spirit of everything that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is like, how do I reclaim that creative, playful, liberated, blissful spirit that I had when I was a kid, that I know is still alive and well in me, but I struggle to reconnect with that.
Dave, thanks for that question. It's probably the question that is at this moment in my life the dearest to my heart, and it's the thing that I'm working with a lot. And there's so much that I'd love to say to that. But I'm going to try to condense it. There is a story. You would have never lost that. Neither would I. Were it not for, it takes an enormous amount of systematic and methodical training, day in, day out, several times an hour, through what they call education, to systematically disconnect you from easy access to flow states. Playfulness is sometimes ha, ha, ha. We've lost track. We don't even know what it means anymore in this society. We think that playfulness, we tend to associate it with something relegated to weekends and if you're lucky, to holidays, right? Things you do on a board game, and there's a sort of a frivolity to it. It's anti-productive and anti-useful, all of those things. And we've got this unnatural delusion of separation between work and play. It's a wound. It's not a philosophy. The philosophy is the late reflection of a serious wound that I would call educational abuse, systematic. So you're right in saying that's completely still within you. And I'm doing everything I can every day to reclaim more of that. There's something to do with it. It kind of falls into two categories. Do what you love. If you're not loving it, have you really looked at, turned under every stone and looked at, are there options to not do it? We are teams. We are teams. Can I trust in giving what I naturally love to give. Because when I'm working playfully, I feel like I end up being, if anything, hyper productive. But I don't want to be productive. I want to express something that's just very compelling, right? And I was going to say, playfulness can be very serious sometimes. Flow states can sometimes be very serious. It's a kind of focus, right? The other category is love what you do. In other words, look for ways to reorganize the way that you do it. So that, for instance, sweeping the floor, can you dance at sweeping the floor? So that then, see, what's essential in reclaiming playfulness, the right to play at life. What is essential is to get into the mindset, once you've set your outcome that you want, which you always will want to do that. There is no escaping that we want an outcome. My meditation in my work is then kill the outcome. Absolutely kill it. And if I'm laying a concrete slab that I'm going to put a tin shed on, and I'm digging this hole for that, and if I catch myself thinking, how much longer do I have to do this before I can put the shed on this, put the concrete down and put the shed on, I've fallen out of myself. So I come back to myself. It's a physical thing. There needs to be a longer breath, and there needs to be inhabiting all the legs, because that brings you to the present and brings you to the pleasure of physicality. And mentally, I'll tell myself, I'm not making a slab to put a shed on it. It's not what I'm doing. What a lie. I'm digging a hole with a shovel. Not even that. I'm inserting a shovel into clay. In fact, what would it be like if that's all I achieve? I'm left with a hole in some clay. So that the achievement is immaterial. But what I did is I lived in my body, and I moved, and I exerted, and I interacted with earth, and I held this beautiful tool in my hands. There is so much pleasure in the moment. You find it if you ever spend long enough in meditation, and then your senses go to where your senses are meant to be, that we've shut down from. And then things that we call ordinary are not. They're delicious. Holding a shovel in your hand is like, wow. The smoothness, the shape, the thought that someone put into this, the weight, the heft, it's delicious. Taking a bite out of an apple is, oh my God, streams. This is kind of threatening that there can be so much pleasure in the moment. It's threatening. So Dave, I'm with you. Fight for that. To reclaim the joy and the playfulness, the laughter of what you do. It helps me to kill the outcome. And the kind of purpose of my life at the moment, I declared, it's kind of fun this way. I like to make it a bit like an epic because it's fun. I declared war on drudgery. So a bit of my life purpose at the moment is war on drudgery. I'm at war against drudgery. I don't accept that that's my destiny or yours. And when drudgery comes, that's an opportunity. How can I do this differently? Or realize that, I don't have to do this because I've got other gifts. Love what you do or do what you love. And that was me trying to keep that answer short. But it's huge. It's huge. There's always somebody rewarding us for self-harm. You will be congratulated for working hard and to the point of self-injury. You will be congratulated. You're a man. Additionally, you've gained extra manhood credits for beating yourself up in the pursuit of your work, and you'll be congratulated for the outcome. That congratulation that congratulatory culture is probably more harmful, I think, than the punishment for not working hard enough. Because we get desperately attached to the bravo, to the recognition. He's a hard worker. And then we don't let it go. We get wrapped around it. So be subversive and enjoy yourself. Oh my God, the revolution's begun already. I got to give you a hint that living this way is wonderfully cataclysmic for the economic orthodoxy of neoliberalism. Okay, it's apocalyptic. Absolutely, and I mean that with every sincerity. And if I had the time, I would explain the pathway of how I get to that. But it's as concrete as hell. Right? Life in pursuit of expressing your passion. Oh dear, we're going to have to recalibrate our economic formulas and everything about how education is done. We think we're so productive. Bullshit. We're running at about 10%. With unimaginable negative effects on human health. Oh my goodness, we're so young in our civilization. Babies. Somebody else have a question?
Yeah, we have Karen and Alice and also Susie. I saw your hand up. Did you want? I don't know if you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, and then Karen and then Alice.
Yeah, I don't know if I lost track of the question or something that I've always really wanted, which was terribly stolen from me from a very young age, is wanting to be understood. And it's like I spend my time understanding everybody else. The religious upbringing, the contradiction of a crazy, chaotic family. Like, where am I in all of this? I don't know how to get past it. Yeah.
Susie, are you talking about that? I mean, I can relate to this quite a bit, but I'll just check with you. Are you talking about that really difficult place where we get stuck in the enactment of a sense that if I show you understanding enough, if I understand you over and over and over again, then one day you'll turn around and understand me, so that we become experts at, in a way that exhausts us and drains us. We become experts at giving to others brilliantly that thing that we have been, that has, like you said, stolen from us. The thing that I didn't get is what I give. Is that what you're kind of referring to? And you will be religiously rewarded for that, by the way, because you're being good.
Right.
Yeah. Is that what you meant?
No, not exactly. I don't know, Robin. I'm
Okay.
a little overwhelmed with this.
All right.
I've never felt understood, and there was nobody there really to understand. Because I would have thought differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
Feeling ashamed of who you are and your actions.
Feeling ashamed of my actions, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they were harmless in a lot of cases. I don't know. Maybe this is something we need to talk about another time. But I just never feel okay.
It is so, distressing to not feel understood. Okay. Deeply so distressing that it's just like you can't sit still anymore. And I wonder how many of us had the experience of feeling like aliens inside our family, like they don't get us. Right? Can we have a little show of hands? It's such a such an awful shared experience of being this alien that, like where we start to, the thought is, I don't belong here. And then the aloneness is unbearable. I'm the only person in the universe. They all seem to understand each other, but not me. Very, very black sheep kind of archetype. So, I think the beginning of a forward movement with something like that is it involves looking for the impulse in your body that wasn't supported to happen. And there's that movement of itself, bringing that back, gives life. That's one thing. That's not the only thing. But I know, for instance, this may be different for you, Susie, but for me, when I tap into that awful place of people looking at me like I'm some kind of another species, because they didn't like what I was bringing, something in me, there's an impulse that I stifle. There's an impulse to scream and demand, there's a kind of like, freaking listen to me. There's a rage sometimes, and that I want to shake, and I couldn't do that. I would have started doing that because every toddler on earth does that. When you feel misattuned, where people don't see you, you become a wild little being. You scratch, you bite, you scream. It's the tantrum, because it's intolerable. It's unthinkable. The betrayal of not being seen. So potentially there's that impulse, and how do we? Part of the nutrient is, what's a safe way to rekindle that impulse in a way that works. Sometimes it's kind of releasing that in a safe therapeutic environment. Sometimes it's, reinvigorating your right to say, no, you didn't get me. Listen to me. Stay with me right now. That's not what I'm saying. Like you did a little bit earlier, Susie, in our conversation. I said to you, is this what you mean? And you said, no, not really. And I like that you've done that, that part of you that is standing up for, no, Robin, I want you to understand me better. That wasn't it. So you came after me. You didn't realize you were doing that necessarily, but you did. That's really cool. That's you're in motion.
Well, I'm not even clear about what I'm talking about. All I know is I feel it in my body,
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to be clear and to concretize in words, because it might well be a pre-verbal experience.
It is.
It happens to so many people, that the helplessness of being a baby, and hold me, pick me up and hold me, and the repeated ignoring of that, which is devastating. So most of us are veterans of that experience. There's a bedrock of feeling like I'm invisible. If I have needs, I'm invisible. When I'm cute, I'm plenty visible. People want to come and hang out when I'm cute, but when I have needs, no longer.
Exactly.
And it's an outrage. It's an outrage. So in a nutshell, this won't be good enough, just me answering your question, because where you live is not in an answer to the question, right? You want a different lived experience in your life. But I think, to some degree, the nutrient involves the reassertion of the right to have needs, even when the world can't meet the need. But the right to have the need, right? And sometimes it's okay that our parents can't understand us, but if they essentially validate, a parent that stays with you and says, look, I'm sorry, I don't really get what you need right now. I can see you're in distress, but you're not going to be alone. I'm sticking with you. And that's I guess, wow, I wish we got that. Because then it's like, I'm okay if you don't quite understand me, as long as you don't tell me I'm shit, right? And walk away from me. If you trust me that whatever I'm longing for is not stupid. So maybe you don't understand me. I can deal with that. I'm not alone right now. Right. So validation. Anyway, your parents lied because they had exactly the same needs as you, but they'd learned to stamp all over them. Right. So this is an ancestral thing that gets passed down.
Yes.
Bottom line, we all, look, can we just please own it? We want to feel seen. We want to feel seen. We want to be known. And then we want to see each other. We scratch at each other to say, come on, give me your realness. I want to see who you are because it's beautiful. I don't want to be the only person in the room. I want to connect with you. So it's a two-way thing, connection. That connection, two-way, the moments of that connection, that is the fundamental driver of human life. I'm out here alone in a separate little body, which is really, really fun sometimes. But then periodically, I need to connect. I need to open up that membrane. Who are you? And please, can you know me? That's all it is. That's all we're ever doing. And then you go, yep, that was beautiful. That was enough. That fills my tank. I'm going to go be alone or be with nature for a while or be with my inner being, the pleasure of being in my body by myself for a while. Solitude, backwards and forwards. That's all we ever do. No, there's the other thing that we do is we pretend that that's not going on. and we hide it all. What am I doing? I'm building a shed. That's what I'm doing. I'm achieving. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you.
All right. We had a couple of other people, and I want to leave a minute at the end to Kate that we can tell people about the training.
Yeah, people have asked about the course. They've been sending me private messages, so yes. But there's Karen, who's had her hand up for a long time, and Alice,
Fantastic. Too. Yeah, Karen. And then Alice.
Hi, Robin. I was actually going to ask about the course because I have to go soon because I've got a client. So I wanted to find out about what the course is going to entail.
Thank you, Karen. Anything that you miss will be in the recorded up on YouTube. Anything that you miss, you can also contact Kate and Brett and they'll give you those details. Or you can also go to my website, robingrille.com, homepage under news and announcements.
But what do you want to know? What do you want to know, Karen? Like the dates?
Yeah, that's the...
No, just what's going to be involved. Like what would we, will we be going through practices or will we, what will we be doing?
This is what we'll be doing. Let me see how... learning the 5 movements of a conversational engagement with our inner child. It starts by noticing and owning when we feel triggered in interactions with the world, listening to what goes on inside ourselves when we're triggered, and using that to, as a thread that tells us what the unmet inner child need is. We need to learn a little bit about the developmental stages of childhood, from 3rd trimester in the womb through to about 24, 25, the end of adolescence. Because it helps you, having that developmental map, you don't have to memorize it, supply it. But it's such a good thing to know because it helps you because really hearing the deepest core need of your inner child, that unmet need. Because listening to that signal can sometimes be a little bit tricky. It's like listening to a faraway radio station, only it's in our bodies. It's helpful to have a developmental map that helps you to recognize, aha, yes, that resonates, that bit there, that's what I'm after. That's why I'm triggered, that need, that's the unmet need. It's that one from when I was about 12 years old, or when I was a baby, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how to identify the need of your inner child. And it really clicks. It feels like, oh, yes, aha, no wonder. Then there's we learn the creative part. The creative movements are about, well, how can I have this need met more often in my life? Life as therapy. How can I walk differently, say things differently, receive things differently, reach out differently, so that that need gets met more often? The upshot is development happens. Development is inevitable when you identify the need that's being activated and meet that with a developmental nutrient that matches. So you learn that process basically in the course for yourself. You know, you can do it lightly, you can do it sitting in the bus and just kind of thoughtfully as a dialogue with yourself, or more deeply in a much deeper state of reflection and meditation. Or I also train, I won't be doing that so much. Look, although this course is open to therapists and healers of all kinds, health professions, school teachers, I really want school teachers to come. But you can also use it for yourself, just for your own personal growth, very much. Why I want school teachers to come, anyone that's got any children anywhere near your life, because children are our greatest triggers, because by being children, they remind us of our own childhood. They trigger their body memory. And I think that inner child awareness, capacity for inner child dialogue is utterly essential. I almost want to say not negotiable, because without that, we act onto the child. We're not connecting with the child. This is where you weren't seeing Susie. True for most of us. Your parents don't see you, they see a projection, which is from their own past. That's why you feel misunderstood. So their interactions and interventions with you, they're fighting their own demons. And you're waiting on the other end like, this isn't about me. It's being made about me, but it's not about me. That's what happens in all our relationships, and with our children in particular, even more so, because they can't talk back very well, can they? They try to. Children are our most powerful triggers. Therefore, our children in our lives, whether your own children or children that you know, your neighborhood, your nephew, your niece, your whatever, kids in your classroom, it's almost like nobody is going to provoke your growth opportunities more powerfully than a child, because they're so childlike. It's like they're such an intense bringer back of the unresolved wounds of your own history. So that's what we learn about. It's a dynamic dialogue that ends in forward motion. 5 movements. Thanks, Karen, for asking.
Thank you.
And we'll
Thank
give
you.
you the dates and etc. where you can read a bit more about it, because I'd love to see you there. Whoever's going to be there. So,
do you do this every year? This course?
We try to do it more than once a year if possible.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends on when we don't have huge intervening factors going on in our personal lives as well. But yeah. And there's been a growing community of inner child journey guides, basically, we call. journey, guys. There's a growing community from around the world, and we've got a Facebook page. Sometimes people really interact through that and ask questions and answer each other's questions, and it's a lovely thing. And sometimes, when there's a lull, that slows down. But I hope to see that grow, and I want to have, my dream is to live in a culture where it's second nature. That when we get triggered, we own the trigger, and it's okay to have conversations with our friends about that, rather than say, "Gosh, what's wrong with my child?" or "What's wrong with my partner?" and send them off to a therapy. To have a much richer question and a truer question, which is what's coming up for me, and what is it that I need. And there's a magical, I can't call it anything less than a magical alchemy, that when our own inner child has been met, our screen through which we see gets wiped, so that a lot of the projection that we're doing, in which we superimpose our own past over the others, tends to vaporize, and then we see something quite different in the person that we're trying to interact with. That's how we get more attuned, right? That's when we can provide the understanding that Susie was saying was missing, right? To understand you, I need to clear my projections about you. Otherwise, I will not understand you. And fundamentally, I don't clear those projections until I talk to my inner child. So that's what the course is about.
Great, thank you.
The real course is the one that's going on all around us every waking moment, life as therapy. But I'm providing a framework for how to grapple with that. And yeah, it's a good framework. It's really, it's lovely to see what people do with it. It really is quite a game changer.
Alice, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just wondered, a long time ago, you mentioned flow states, and I just wondered if you could say something about what a flow state feels like. What's the embodied sense of a flow state?
What's interesting about a flow state, what was your name again? Alice. Thanks for your question. There's not a lot of self-awareness, self-conscious, that self-conscious style of awareness. So it's not so much about, wow, this is feeling wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you are. So there's flow states can be very intense, like in, say, dance or competitive sport, or it can be super calm. But it's about it. It's hard to describe a flow state. It's easier to give you the symptoms.
Okay.
In which your sense of time gets very badly disoriented.
Mm-hmm.
And it can go both ways. You think you've been at the game for 5 minutes, and you look at your watch and you're in shock because it's been an hour and a half. Or the reverse is true. You feel like you've been there all day, and you look at your watch and it's only been 5 minutes. It's a seriously almost disturbing disorientation around time. But oddly, it can feel wonderful. Mm-hmm. that has happened. And you discover you've been in a flow state when you come out of flow. There's a sense of loss of self-consciousness. Like, for example, in a flow state, by the way, and the brain waves are different, closer to alpha. So it's a measurable thing. It's really about such an absorption with the thing that you're doing that you lose that consciousness of yourself. You get melded almost with what you're doing, or the person you're dancing with, or the poem you're writing, or the thing you're building, or the mathematical formula that you're figuring out. Or, I've got one of my dear cousins who loves coding. So he gets lost in flow states when he's coding. It's
Sounds
this
like there's a
calm.
myth.
The computer thing. If you give me coding, it won't be a flow state. I promise you that. It'll be a state of unbelievable distress and frustration. Right. Yeah, flow states are very peculiar to your vocation, your design, what you're here to do on this earth. But in the loss of self-consciousness, self-awareness, it's quite remarkable that there's a discontinuity from your usual character traits. So that somebody that's ordinarily incredibly shy and timid and embarrassed and ashamed and inhibited can find themselves speaking with incredible confidence and fluidity to 5,000 people in an arena. And yet the same person is shy and awkward at a dinner party. But when you're in your flow, because you're talking about the thing that is your passion, it's funny how the self-consciousness, even the fear of public speaking, your phobias kind of vanish. They come back. But the flow state is a discontinuity from your usual familiar, that which you think is yourself. And we require that exit from our familiar egoic state. We require that exit. It's like you need to go outside often. So that a lot of people, because we live in a society, going back to Dave's questions, in which 80% of people don't do the work that they love, and they accept doing work that is onerous, drudgery, unpleasant. There are people that have an entire life without hardly any flow states at all. And they don't sit down and go, oh, geez, I miss my flow states. I wish it's not, you just live out the symptoms of not having that in your body. You live the illness, the inflammatory conditions, the depression or the rage, the addictions, the alcohol, the drugs, the screen addictions, without knowing why. It's one of the biggest tragedies in the world, the educational abuse, the systematic robbery of flow states. Education is designed to interrupt the flow state before it sets in. Because you can be adoring what you're learning in class, but the moment you start to sink into it, there's an incredibly violent sounding bell, like it snaps you out and get up, and you got to hurry, pick up everything and get up and move to another room. That's violent. It does repeated violence to your flow states. No wonder we're kind of scared to get in there. Careful what you ask me, because I've got so much feeling for those things, and then I find it hard to stop.
No, I love your response to this.
I hope I haven't over-answered.
No. It really, I mean, I can feel it, which is sort of what I was hoping to, yeah.
And Alice, I love working with people. It tends to, the loss of flow state or that, that sad kind of, I know my flow states and I don't get enough. A lot of the wounding goes back to either the high school or university days or the primary school days. It becomes specific. There's a specific story. How did you lose that? How was that taken from you? Who said what? Who gave you the messages? Who gave you the rewards for the wrong thing? Who gave you the punishment and the shaming? And unwrapping that story is so empowering. That's what we do in the child training course. You are empowered in pursuit of your own story, because in that is the taut rubber band that wants to be released, that then catapults you forward. You start with no wonder, if that's what happened to me and that's how it felt. God, no wonder. That's my struggle. No wonder. What do I want? This is what my body's been crying for that and yelling for that for a long time, since I was 17, since I was 12. God damn it. I love that God damn it moment. I just love it. Healthy spiritual rage. I'm saying damn it because this is going to end up on YouTube. That's not the word I'm actually thinking. You got that? So
Very trained up.
yeah. So and then that developmental frustration is jet fuel once you validate it. It is hypersonic jet fuel that will then start to embed the new experience in your day. Life as therapy. I'm going to be doing this differently because I've been waiting to do this differently since I was 17 or 12 or whatever, and things got shut down. My flow states got shut down. So this is, now we're referring to a developmental stage that's peculiarly about vocation. There are other developmental issues that people come up with, not feeling understood, not having boundaries, not being nourished. It's a whole range. So what's personal? What's your story? What's personal to you? What do you want? I love the idea that in the human lifespan, our adult years are riddled with opportunities to play catch up with the missing bits of our developmental years. And so that adult development goes on, but it's combined with the continued development of the inner child.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Playing catch up with the bits that you didn't get, I'm going to get them now.
Mm-hmm.
That idea smiles on me quite a bit. So I want to share it.
Thank you.
I like that story. And if it's the wrong story, I still like the story. I'm going to go with it.
Okay, so go ahead, Brett. You wanted to say something?
I just wanted to make a quick mention. I think I would be remiss since there's been talk about developmental nutrients and character traits and wounding, that one of the reasons Robin had a U.S. hiatus from the Inner Child workshops was he produced an amazing series called The 7 Rites of Passage. And that's goes into depth into each of the different developmental stages, what might have been missing there and what would be required to heal that in later on. So that's a video series that is available. We recorded the whole thing. So that's sort of supplemental material that could help with this particular thing. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, that's true. I'm getting some good feedback about that series. It's just a long string of ahas.
Yeah, it's
very
powerful.
empowering.
Very powerful.
And it's very empowering to get what are the universal core developmental needs that we all pass through. It ends up in a very empowering place. It helps then, it gives you the ammunition to really validate. There's a reason why I feel this way. And I thought I was crazy. No, there's a reason why I feel this way.
Yeah. Okay,
so
Robin.
do we need to say anything about the upcoming Inner Child course that starts on the 21st, 22nd of August, 2024?
I have it starting on the 18th of September.
Oh, no, I'm all jumbled.
Yeah, that's the one that's in Europe.
That's right now. No, August. I was just talking about today. Sorry. Edit. Click. Yeah, so September. Yeah, you got it. What do we say? Go click on your link.
Yeah, I've shared the links. More. Yeah, I'll circulate this as a part of the.
Yeah.
You'll all get a recording from tonight, and yes, but please join us. It is a very wonderful series where you learn how to. There's questionnaires that we share and processes that you learn, and you get to practice with each other. And people, I use it all the time. So please come and join us.
People of health practitioners of all stripes, what they do is adapt my inner child dialogue. So they'll adapt it to fit they'll use it in their way. They make it their own tool within the context of the kind of work that they do. teachers, school teachers as well, childcare workers as well. So there is that. And if the time zone, we select the time that ends up being convenient for maximally convenient for North America and Australasia. If that's too difficult for you, contact me, and because there are options. But right now we're talking about the North American / Australian, Kiwi, Mexican, Canadian arc.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for tonight, Robin, and for life as therapy. And
Yeah,
I
it's a
hope
great
that
pleasure.
yeah, I hope that we see every one of you in the upcoming Inner Child Journey, or perhaps as part of our Global Wars Rites of Passage community. So
Let's be subversive.
Yes. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Kate and Brett. Thanks for organizing. Good to see you all.